Dear listeners, thank you for tuning in to our fabulous podcast. The current COVID restrictions limit our lineup of hosts and guests. As soon as possible, we will bring you the full diversity of queer voices from Brussels. In the meantime, stay safe and happy listening.
Welcome to this new episode of KET Talks, the podcast of KetMagazine. I am Philippe and I am your host. Today we will talk about the term queer. What does it mean? How was it used and how do we use it now? And why is KET a queer magazine? We are queer. And I could talk about this in solo, but that would be the most boring thing ever. So I'm in the colorful company of these four queers. We have Vincent, our French globetrotter and LGBTQI plus queer specialist. Bonjour Vincent.
Hello, everybody, queer or not, listening to us.
And we have the most queer Hungarian ever, Zia Bogat.
Hello, hello. I'm not sure I'm the most queer, but I try my best.
And of course, our music talent from Croatia, Vjeran, is here too. Bok.
Back again.
So, the topic of the day. Well, queer. Let's start today's discussion. I will kick down maybe an open door. Is the term LGBTQI+, look, I'm already mixing it, not something overcomplicated? Some listeners might maybe get a bit angry now, but I have always hated that term. Because it's making things, I think, so complicated. Mm-hmm. And it's true that in one way it is interesting because it opens our eyes on the diversity of our community, because a large public might still think there's only lesbians and gays. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, there's even so much more than what's in LGBTQI+. What if you are in the plus, like pansexuals, for instance? And above all, I don't think it's communicative. So that's why I really like this term queer. And we will have a discussion about that term today. So to understand it better, Vincent has done some research, of course, and we are all ears. But just don't be too long.
Yeah, I will try not to be long, but actually there's a lot to say about queer.
Okay, we listen.
Okay, so let's start with where it comes from, because we find it in the English language already in the 16th century, and then its meaning actually oblique, off-centered, so nothing to do with the LGBTQI plus community at that time. But in the 19th century, we find this term meaning weird, that starts to be applied to men that do not conform to the norm of masculinity. So that at the beginning of the 20th century, it's a term that is associated with homosexual men and used as an insult. But then it's overtaken by the word homosexual itself and gay, and its use fades away.
Oh. But it's interesting because we are not native speakers. Native English speakers. So for me personally, I didn't really know the word queer, and I didn't really thought that as an insult. So
yeah,
I still don't really think of it as an insult. But it's interesting to know that back then it was a derogatory term.
Yeah, I can only agree to that.
Yeah, I think it's still an insult in English-speaking countries where the word was used, but for me it's the same.
Mm-hmm.
Like I started to know the term only when there was this program that was a remake of Queer Eye for a Straight Guy in France that introduced the word queer. I think it was 2004 or 2005, but I guess that the first time most French people heard about the term queer.
Yeah.
Well, I heard it the first when there was the LGBTQ, and I was like, what's the Q?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm, indeed.
Same for me.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's move on because I can tell you where it comes from after.
Please, let us know.
So actually the term is reclaimed by LGBT activists in a positive way. So they try to reclaim this slur language in a positive way at the beginning of the 80s as a term that refers to actually all people that are strange and weird, meaning all the people of the LGBTQI plus community. However, at that time, gays and lesbians were prominent in the community and taking all the visibility. So some people in our community decided to claim this word queer to represent all the people that were not visible, mainly transgender people, non-binary people, but also people of color, people with disabilities, or people from low social classes. So in the community itself, we can see already a divide between some people who think that it's for everybody and other people who say, no, actually we need this term to represent minorities inside our own minority.
So it's a bit the plus.
It's a bit the plus of a time.
Is that why it's LGBTQ and then sort of Q was representing everything that was not L, G, B, or T? And then as the conversation was going on about the sexuality and all on the spectrum, we added the QI and then the QIA, and now the plus represents everything outside of it that doesn't have its own letter within the abbreviation. But Q served as sort of just
because
an add to it.
in the 80s, 90s, the acronym was just LGBT.
Yeah,
So the Q was added
to
especially
represent everything else.
Yeah, to represent everything else. And the I came
Nice.
from intersex people that gained visibility only in the last decades. And as you say, the plus is
But
now
there's an
for-
A now that's
The
being
A
more
is-
used.
Yeah, because it's a very important letter that we will talk about in another podcast, I
Ah.
guess, which is for the allies.
And not for the asexual?
Well, sometimes it's claimed by asexual, but for me it means more allies. So all the people that are
You know what?
supporting
We'll
us.
have a topic about asexuals too, if you want. But
Okay.
let's continue with queer.
Okay.
That's all.
So it gets a bit more complicated when the terms actually enters academia. So sociologists, and
lapsus.
other people in universities, they see what's happening in the community, and what was called then gay and lesbian studies is renamed queer studies. So as to widen it to other categories, and within these queer studies, some people start to develop a new theory, which they called queer theory. So what is that? Actually, they decide that, well, in their thinking, they have to move beyond binaries such as male, female, and man, woman, or even straight, gay, but also binaries like able, disabled, for example, and to kind of break through all these categories. So it's a new approach that tried to see the world from a perspective that is non-binary and go beyond these binaries. So then people start to use this term based on this approach to define themselves as outside of these categories or not willing to conform to any of these categories. So
Okay.
this is a new kind of new meaning of queer today, is to say, okay, I'm queer, so I refuse to be categorized as male or as woman because I want to go beyond these categories.
So it's basically Generation Z.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
it's the young kids coming up and saying that all this bullshit about labels, it's just
Bullshit.
Bullshit. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the fact that we are in an old view of the world, we'll say like this, four men around the table, actually we're four people around the table, and they
Yeah.
shouldn't see us as men, but as queer people.
Well, it's a matter of perspective. With all these categories, the rule is self-definition.
Yeah.
Mm.
So it's more how you see yourself. You can see yourself as man, it's fine. But if you think that you don't conform or your identity don't conform to any of these categories or don't abide to these categories, then you could see yourself and define yourself as queer in the meaning that
Yeah.
you don't want to be categorized as man, female, non-binary or whatever, or gay or lesbian or
Loves it.
asexual. Saying like claiming, it's more a claim. So that's a little bit the paradox, because then it becomes a category in itself when it starts to criticize the categories, but it's a way to say, actually, I want to move beyond these
Yeah.
categories.
But it's also agency. It's about agency. We have to acknowledge the fact that I am deciding who I am. I
Mhm.
think that's the coolest part of
Yeah.
being queer and these
And
queer
then
theories.
you're aware of it. So if I would ask you guys, are you like 100% man or more female? I think everyone around the table will say, no, it's not black or white. You are really into gray. And sometimes it's dark gray, and some days we feel a bit more light gray.
Well, I think it's for me. If you want to use an analogy, it's more like there are different elements out there, and it's up to me to construct my own identity, my own sexuality, and yeah, I can play around with these elements, and I think it's about fluidity and agency to choose, the freedom to choose what I want and how I want to see myself and how I want to present myself to others.
I like that term, fluidity.
Yeah.
Well, it's one of the categories. You can be, for example, gender fluid, meaning that your gender identity, you feel that is moving from one identity to another. It's something fluid that flows.
So we could say
So
put the
you-
F in, and the F is in the plus.
Wow.
Pantarei.
But I think this shows us that this word is complicated, because for some people it's an insult. For other peoples, it regroups all the categories. For other people, it's only minorities. For other people, it means going beyond these categories. And sometimes that's what makes this term complicated in the way we talk about it.
Yeah, it's a heavy loaded term, but yeah, I think it also gives us the possibility to play with it and use it in different contexts. And I guess here in KET, I don't know you guys how you see it, but
We are queer.
yeah, exactly.
Hallelujah. 100%.
Yeah.
Well, I think of what you said in the introduction, actually, and saying that for you think that LGBTQI plus is complicated. Actually, I would say LGBTQQAIIP or something like this.
Oh my God.
That you can add as many letters, and yeah, it's complicated, but I think the most important thing is to be aware of all this diversity.
Yeah.
So we should not we should think about this term, and as you say, it's complicated and maybe a bit mysterious for a lot of people, but I think it can be replaced only if you really understand the whole diversity behind it, because the purpose of this diversity is visibility for underrepresented groups.
Yeah. So we shouldn't be quick to repaint LGBTQI plus with queer before understanding the big diversity that comes with all these adding letters to the LGBTQI plus.
Yeah, exactly. And personally, I'm moving more and more actually to using the word rainbow to replace the
Wonderful.
acronym.
And you know what? Look at the table.
Look at the table.
Look at this table.
No, and actually that's the reason. So for those listening to us, we are just standing on the table with our rainbow flag, because for me this is the symbol that unites us all beyond these categories, and that's the symbol that we all feel we belong to, whatever the categories we belong to. And so I think, well, that's my opinion, but replacing it by queer, after all that we said, is a
It's
little
hard.
bit tricky.
Yeah.
But using the term rainbow, so talking about rainbow people, for example, maybe it speaks more to the people, or that's the way I see it.
And then we can claim the rainbow from the straits.
Yeah, let's be serious again. Vincent was
Yeah, I'm done.
Then I have a proposal. Let's do a little quiz. Who
Oh.
wants to do a quiz?
No,
Me, of
everybody
course.
wants to do a quiz.
Okay. So the quiz is queer or not queer. Good.
Wow.
You ready? Okay. First, Oscar Wilde,
queer.
Dora Richter.
Queer?
Queer.
You know who it is? No? It's the first known
No.
transgender woman.
Yeah, the first.
yeah,
thank you.
The first person.
Okay, I will make it easier. ABBA.
Queer.
Of course. And there's no
Dominique
question.
Jackson.
Queer.
Queer?
Donald Trump.
Not queer.
Not cool.
Not
No.
queer.
Maybe his wig is queer.
I
Well,
don't see anything. Maybe it's orange
His skin
face.
color, yes, is queer.
Okay, next. Jonathan Van Ness.
Queer.
Queer eye.
Yeah, I love them. Jonathan Van Ness. I just said it.
Again, very queer.
I just love it. Like him. You should follow his Instagram. Prince.
Queer.
Yes.
Jay-Z.
Not queer?
Not queer.
No.
His wife is queer.
But he's really gay friendly.
Yeah.
He's an
Yeah.
ally.
He's
Yeah.
a real ally.
He's an
Absolutely.
Alright.
In that
yeah.
sense,
Yeah.
indeed.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Queen Elizabeth II.
not queer.
I'm
I
gonna
don't
say
see her very queer, to be honest.
I'm gonna say it in the words of Mariah Carey. I don't know her.
George Michael.
Queer.
Yes, very much.
Mannequin Piss.
Queer.
Janneke Piss.
Who?
Sure. I mean, if Mannequin Piss queer, Mannequin Piss is also queer.
Nicki Minaj.
Yeah, very
Queer.
much.
Eminem.
Not queer.
Oh, no.
No.
Bolsonaro.
Not queer.
No.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Very much.
Queer.
Queer.
J.K. Rowling.
Not queer. Not queer.
Well, it's
very
It's a
tricky.
tricky
I know, it's a
question.
tricky one.
It's,
very
we
tricky,
can
yeah.
maybe talk about it in another podcast.
No, ma'am.
But so queer or not queer?
No.
Yeah.
No, ma'am.
For me personally, she is queer, but yeah. It's,
Okay, where we can have a
complicated.
discussion.
Well,
when we-
she's queer on some aspects and very binary on others.
Yeah.
Which
yeah, so it's
makes
still
it complicated.
with allies. It's still sometimes complicated. Yeah, true. Billie Eilish,
Yeah.
Queer.
our
Queer.
Belgian queen Mathilde.
Mathilde. No,
Okay.
I don't see. Maybe personally, she might be an ally. I don't know her very much, but she's not queer.
It's
in
not
her
the image.
She's
Not
attitude.
very
Yeah.
visibly.
Yeah.
and she's
queer.
required not to be queer.
Although her
Yeah.
outfits, I have to say, I'm sorry, but her outfits are fabulous.
Oh.
Often Nathan.
So you
and,
know, it's
and the designer is queer.
and she's kind of a gay icon, I think, in Belgium for
Yeah?
for some. Yeah,
Okay.
Well, she's a
think so.
queen, so.
yeah.
Work.
Okay, next. Saint Christopher.
Who?
Queer?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I don't think he was himself queer, but it's more his image that
Yeah.
has become queer.
Don't assume his queerness.
I didn't know him personally.
Okay, next. Mona Lisa.
I don't know why it sounds weird, but for me, she's super queer. Of course,
Just
yeah.
the look in her eyes. That witty little crooked smile.
No, but also, yeah. I mean, she's queer. She's
this
queer.
is ridiculous.
Okay. Marge Simpson.
Queer.
Brie Van de Kamp.
Queer.
Yes.
Eurovision Song Contest.
Queer.
Queer.
Joseph Sayer.
Well, yes. I mean,
Did I pronounce it well?
Jozef Sayer, yes, the politician from Fidesz,
Yeah.
KDNP, who got caught in a
Lockdown orgy.
festivity.
Is he queer?
Let's just say yes.
Okay, last politician. Justin Trudeau.
Queer.
Mm,
Can we have him on the show?
Yeah.
And then very last, Brussels.
Brussels is super queer.
Yes,
The
queer.
queer capital of
absolutely
Europe.
Queer, yes.
Okay, thank you guys. So we should conclude this. What's a conclusion?
Well, maybe we can talk about how we at KET see this word queer after
Yeah.
all we said and how
Yeah.
we try to interpret it in the articles that you can find on online and in this podcast, in the
Yeah.
attitude that we bring. And I think, and you tell me if you agree, that we try to use queer in a positive way, to refer to the full diversity of the LGBTQI plus community, aiming to represent all the aspects and dimension of this diversity. We also embrace a queer approach on the topics we cover, focusing on the people beyond their classification as belonging to one category or another. And we aim to participate in the movement that questions the barriers that these categories create in order to break and to move beyond the limitations they create. And in that sense, we hope to participate in building a more inclusive world.
Absolutely, because we want to build bridges between the L and the G and the B and the T and the Q and the P and the L. No, it's true. That's
I
KET.
think KET is trying to build bridges and create some connections between all these people.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Vincent, for this super
Welcome.
interesting information. Okay, thank you. Now, let's listen to Bogat, because I suppose you've brought your recommendations, so we are all ears.
Yes, when we were discussing earlier what to prepare for this podcast, and we decided to to see the word queer, I was thinking of the different meanings, of course, that we just seen from Vincent's presentation. And I thought, yeah, maybe I can bring two different examples, a little bit opposites of each other, and which shows very well the exclusivity and inclusivity of this word. So my first recommendation is called The House of Impossible Beauties. It's a novel from Joseph Cassara, published in 2018. And it takes us to Harlem, New York in the 80s, into the center of the ballroom scenes, the ballroom culture. So for people who don't really know what a ballroom scene is or what a ballroom is, it was a place indeed for people within the LGBT community who were not feeling well represented, mostly trans women, Latinos, Afro-American, Afro-Caribbean people from lower social class and so on. And they created this safe place for themselves. So the story basically follows Angel, a 17-year-old trans woman who falls in love with Hector, a very dazzling and promising dancer. And together, the pair set out to create the House of Extravaganza. And with their members, Venus, Daniel, Juanito, they try to make the best out of their life, because they're pushed to live on the margins of society, but they do it with fearless authenticity, and their story is actually quite beautiful. If you've seen the legendary documentary from Jenny Livingstone, Paris is Burning,
Oh yeah.
you will love this novel, because the real life events and characters from that documentary is kind of reimagined and moved forward in this very very nice novel. And this shows this kind of exclusivity within the LGBT world, that it existed in the past. And my second recommendation is the polar opposite. You might have heard about the series We Are Here on HBO.
Yeah.
The story is very nice. It's 3 drag queens set out on a journey across America,
It's super
visiting
funny.
small little towns. Indeed, I'm sure if I say the name Bob the drag queen,
Eureka.
Shangela and Eureka, indeed, everyone is around the
Going
table.
wild.
They will know who I'm talking about. So the idea is to build communities, to visit small towns and put on a fabulous drag show for one night, and also to transform certain people from the local communities to become the new drag daughters of these drag celebrities. And of course, they are sharing their stories, they're sharing their life experiences in small town America, how is to be queer, how is to be a lesbian, living with disabilities, how to be an ally, how to be a person who was a bully before, but now wants to understand the community better and wants to help and wants to make the world better. So I think this show is a beautiful example of the power of inclusivity, the power of connecting people within the queer community and outside of the queer community. And during the 6 episodes, I was laughing, I had tears in my eyes. It's truly moving, and I really recommend it for everyone. So my 2 recommendations is indeed House of Impossible Beauties and HBO's Max, We Are Here. Because you know what? We are here, we are queer, so we all get used to it, and you get used to it, and the world gets used to it.
True.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bogat. Now it's time to talk about music. So, Vjeran, will you make us dance today?
Oh, honey, you know I will. Well, so
Honey.
far we've actually had so far in the recommendations Belgian artists, we had American artists, we've had electro disco kind of music, but we also had queer musical recommendations such as Christine and the Queens, Rina Sawayama, Years and Years. But this week we're talking all queer, quite literally all queer. So that means one thing, ladies. I have one question for you.
Exciting.
Who should go home tonight and why?
Oh
So it's a
my
hint.
God.
It's a hint. We're talking about drag queens, of course. We're recommending music coming from drag queens, and you guessed it. I think I've had to stay on brand because we said that we're going to talk about that I cannot say a full sentence without mentioning RuPaul's Drag Race, and that moment is finally here.
We're happy for you.
I'm very happy. We're recommending a song called UK Han, performed by the team United Kingdolls
Of course.
from RuPaul's Drag Race UK Season 2. Now, why on earth would we be recommending drag queen song? Well, actually, if you're listening to the podcast and you haven't heard about the song, it's an unusual thing because the song UK Han that was initially performed as part of the main challenge musical on the reality show that we just mentioned, and its catchy chorus that literally goes big bang bong, sing sang song, and ding dang dong. Well, they
UK Han.
they have reached top 40 charts in UK.
They did.
Which
Yeah,
is
can you believe it?
ridiculous.
And it reached number 1 on iTunes on the day when the song got out. It was there for a short while, but it's quite, it's not impossible, but it's very surprising and unusual for a drag queen song to reach number 1 on UK iTunes and to even hit the top 40 charts. And yeah, it's even playing in clubs in Australia.
Ah, lucky one.
Yeah, the people are actually enjoying nightlife there. And the song is a drag queen's take on Eurovision, so hence the perfect, silly, catchy lyrics that transport you to the world where coronavirus doesn't exist and where Bimini Bambula, she's the prime minister.
I want to be
I
in that
love it.
country.
Really.
Well, I guess it's been my wake up song for the last 10 days now or 2
Bing,
weeks.
bang,
I have a
bong.
question.
It's
Is
full
there a
of energy.
chance that this is the UK song for the next Eurovision Song Contest?
No, they've already picked
no,
it.
you need to
Ah.
pick a song, original, blah blah blah. So
No,
it-
they've picked their pick
Yeah,
already.
yeah, yeah. No, it wouldn't fit the
They
requirements.
would win.
Ah, they would win maybe.
Yeah.
So yeah, UK Han is on all streaming platforms, including our own KET's Spotify playlist. And the one last question remains: will you clap for the sing sang song?
Clap for the
Big Bang Dong. Clap for the Big Bang Bong.
Clap for the UK Han.
Oh my.
Okay, I
Yeah,
think this time
we have to warn people that when they start listening to this song, they will never stop.
Yeah.
It's an
So
eye worm.
It's
it's
dangerous.
worse than COVID-19.
Once you catch
Catches
it,
on.
Okay, thank you, Vjeran.
You're very welcome.
You know what? We have arrived at the end of this episode.
well,
So yeah, big thank you to Visit Brussels for supporting us, for supporting KetMagazine and KET Talks. And of course, thank you Vincent, Bogat, Vjeran. Once again, I had lots of fun.
Yeah,
we did
me
too.
too.
Yeah.
Me
Amazing.
too.
Loved it.
Yeah, and it was super interesting, and I hope you who are listening to us also had lots of fun and learned new things. If you have comments or any ideas, don't hesitate to share it with us. You can do it on our Facebook, so don't hesitate neither to go to the website ket.brussels to discover the latest articles. And yeah, follow us on Instagram, on Spotify, there's playlists on YouTube. And yeah, just stay tuned with us. And now I just say bye-bye.
hello.
Bye-bye.